Hello, David.
Hi.
He's an AI innovator, a data scientist, an influencer, and a lifetime marketer. It's such an honor to have you, David. Do you mind giving a quick introduction of yourself?
Yes, you're being generous with data scientists. I work with data scientists, but I don't think I would claim myself as one. But sure, my gosh, I've been around for a very long time, since the early days of the internet. I think my first internet job was as early as 1998, right around there. It's really incredible to be talking about AI in that context because when I think about technology has been a constant in my career, even though I've worked in publishing, marketing, communications, user experience design, e-commerce, in all these areas. Um, I've been at ground zero and have seen the early iterations of the web, how the web changed under browsers, how it then changed again with search engines, how then it changed again with social media, how we saw broadband transform and mobile technologies, and here we are with AI. And I missed e-commerce, which was a huge one as well. And so AI is the latest and perhaps biggest, or if not as big as any of those transformations. So it's super exciting to still be working with technology in digital media in this latest digital transformation.
You were at the AI venture even before OpenAI introduced ChatGPT. Do you mind talking a little bit of that adventure, what you did
Sure.
with
Yeah.
AI?
Yeah, I was working with a company called Soul Machines, which is a AI avatar technology company. So they create very lifelike um, CGI avatars. And this was before the generative AI revolution, but before OpenAI ever released its first GPT model. And it was really being a ground zero for that transformation. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody was really doing anything. In fact, I would make the argument that I was working in the field that came before generative AI, which was called conversational AI.
Mhm.
And this is the world of Siri. This is the world of Alexa. Siri just heard me and now is lighting up over here.
Right.
Um, and so what that means is that these are technologies where essentially not unlike user experience design, where you're actually creating visual interface, you're creating conversational interfaces. But AI is a part of that. So for example, natural language processing is an AI-enabled technology. So AI is a part of that. And Soul Machines also was using AI in the CGI. They called it autonomous animation. So there were parts of it that were AI. But one day we got all woke up and saw that there was such a thing called a large language model making its way through the world. And we realized conversational AI is going to change, and not just conversational AI. So we were at ground zero during that. And that's when I first got exposed to large language models and just really started drinking the Kool-Aid. And we changed our product. I mean, there were many initiatives where I was working with teams that were trying to figure out how to actually tap into ChatGPT, OpenAI early days, pay for it as well, because that's how it works, and then actually create have our AI avatars actually be connected to the large language model, to ChatGPT. So it was like adding a visual interface to ChatGPT. So I was there for about 2 years, and then decided to make the move back into professional services, which is the space where we're helping companies, organizations, marketing functions, communications groups, both build things with AI, get smarter in the space, and also help figure out their data strategies, which is at the core of any AI development. There is no AI without data.
Absolutely. So you recently took a role as EVP for AI analytics at Ringer Sciences. Do you mind, giving us an introduction of your firm and how data is, actually the core of your core competencies and how you help your clients around the world?
Sure. At the core, we're a data analytics and insights firm. We're small but mighty and nimble. We live data, we breathe data. And what we do really is focus on delivering actionable intelligence, what we call actionable intelligence, which ironically is another kind of AI, if you think about it.
Right.
And what that means is we're not just interested in gathering data and structuring it. We create tools. We have tools that we have created for ourselves to actually help automate the data gathering, tagging, structuring process. But that's in service to actually developing intelligence, which is in service to creating insights, which helps us inform marketing communications programs. So that's sort of on the data insights area. We're also building things when it comes to using AI technologies. We build what we call custom language models. So, or I refer to them as CLM for short. So we have some projects that are actually in play right now where we build the language models, train them from the ground up, make sure that they are secure, enterprise grade. And we have a project right now where actually we have fed and trained a large language model on hundreds of thousands of PDFs that a company has access to. And now their employees can actually interact with the language model as opposed to searching and finding for specific paragraphs or lines of type that might live within one document. So that's one example. We're doing a number of things when it comes to building with AI. But essentially that's what we are, sort of a data and analytics and data science firm that's both using intelligence and insights, but also building AI solutions.
Would you say data security, efficiency, as well as when you use CLMs, maybe it would prevent hallucination? Could you just point out to the audience what the pain points are in the enterprises and why your solutions are relevant?
Yeah. Hallucination and security are separate issues. Security means that you're passing everything through secure systems that you trust, essentially, right? So you're using Microsoft Azure, for example, to store data. I think there may still be some trust issues with the kinds of data that you put into OpenAI. There is an OpenAI enterprise, but I think that will take time for trust to build around there. So security is one issue separate from hallucinations, which the hallucinations issue is something that will take time and work and experience because AI currently is not 100% hallucination free. So which means you're always going to need people to look at the data that's coming out. We're getting better at training and prompting to put guardrails around large language models so that they hallucinate less. But we're not at a point, and you see this with Google, for example,
Right.
that they're grappling with this. We're not at a point with the technology where it's going to be purely hallucination free. So for every enterprise, for every organization, the question is what's good enough, and what are the human guardrails or the human in the loop, so to speak, solutions that can be put in place to help counter inaccurate information.
So how do you advise your enterprise clients? How do you help them with a learning curve? Do you have some kind of a program, so-called AI acceleration, or is there something you could show to the audience, like with your secret sauce serving your clients?
Segue. I'm going to pull up what we were just discussing. So let me
Okay, sounds good.
and do that. So we use a tool that we talk about as an AI acceleration journey. And this is based off a tool, as I mentioned when we first started talking. I've been in the digital and technology space a very long time. And a good chunk of that time I've been on the services side and have found it helpful with any one of these digital transformations when we're having conversations with executives. It's a really good point of orientation to sort of talk about where the organization is realistically
Mhm.
they want to go, what that means, and how to get there. So we have a hypothesis that every organization is going to need to be AI literate, that they need to be AI ready, and ultimately they will need to accelerate whatever they're doing with AI, but do it at the enterprise level, do it at the organizational level. So that's our hypothesis. And in that hypothesis, we believe that there are four key stages, and that all organizations start with some level of awareness. But what that means is that there may be leadership expressing interest, but nothing's really formalized when it comes to AI. There's buzz in the air, which we know everyone's talking about it. But there's not really a clear or cohesive vision at the organizational level, even if people are talking about it both internally and externally. And there's definitely experimentation happening, but it's not formalized. It's at the individual level. Could even be a CEO, which
Mhm.
I think is one of the key points of acceleration. Once your CEO is using it, then it's probably going to turn into something. But in order for it to actually be an enterprise-based initiative, it has to be more formal than that. So what you want to do is you want to go from that level of awareness to actually more proper learning that's more formalized. So this is actually having education and knowledge sharing in a more official or sanctioned way. It could be through credentials. It could be in a smaller way in terms of getting your executives educated. You'll want to actually at some point have policies in place, governance. We saw this with social media, for example, when it got to a certain tipping point, companies realized that they had to update the rules of governance, the rules of engagement. It actually started with marketing and communications and then went from there.
Mhm.
You'll have to look at your data strategy. Again, there is no AI without a data strategy.
Mhm.
And then you also want to be communicating what you're doing. If you are leading the charge within your organization, whether that's at the CEO level or 3 clicks down, if it's formalized, there needs to be a cadence of communications around that. And then the third phase is AI experimenting, which seems a little counterintuitive because you would think, we mentioned experimenting and being AI aware, but what's different about it is that it's experimentation at the enterprise level, at the organized level. So it's sanctioned, it's official experimenting. And in that experimenting, you're actually you're outlining objectives. You're looking at pilots or things that you want to do. You're prioritizing them. You're looking at them with some rigor. You may be saying on one end of the spectrum, you know what, we just want to learn from this pilot, or on the other end, we're going to measure this pilot and these are the KPIs and metrics that we're going to actually hold against it. And then you're learning from those deployments that the learnings are coming back into the system and they're being distributed. So oftentimes within an enterprise, when there are early spaces of transformation and innovation, you'll see center of excellences being developed. This is very common within the enterprise. It's happened honestly with pretty much every digital transformation. So you go from experimenting to acceleration when you've actually got multiple initiatives in play. You've got pilots under your belt. You've formalized roles. So you've actually updated job descriptions. Now this development may be part of your job. You're going to actually be accountable for it. We're not just going to hire a chief AI officer, which you always see companies do. It's sort of a lot of companies that are AI aware will hire someone because they're signaling. It's almost more of a communication tactic than it is a true transformation initiative. But what we're talking about is we're talking about slow, gradual, steady, methodical moving ahead. Except with AI, it's moving really fast, so you can't move too slowly. You're operationalizing this, you're publicizing it, you are communicating about what you're doing, and then you're starting to scale and repeat the successes that you're having. So when you get to that point, you can say, yes, we've got AI initiatives at the enterprise level, and we're on the path to accelerating those. And then it becomes a cycle at that point. So I'll just show you the next slide. This is a framework that we developed to help accelerate AI across the enterprise. So it's aligning on those goals, it's analyzing how ready you are, it's assessing, developing a roadmap, it's figuring out how to operationalize that roadmap, and then it's actually developing your first pilot. Whether the pilot is a governance model, it could be policy, or it actually could be something that you build. But it's key to actually not just learn, but to do as well.
Excellent. So let me ask two questions going back to the previous slides, because I think lots of organizations are in that learning to experimenting, assuming that the awareness is already there. What have you seen as best practices or in your model you would suggest to your clients in terms of the education? In what kind of a format in the organization? Is that workshop? Is that online? I mean, how do you, get that started at the organizational level in terms of education?
Yeah, it really depends. The answer depends on the culture.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I lost the signal, slowed down for a little bit. The answer to that really depends on the culture of the organization, which is different for every organization. So there's not one true answer, with the exception of it does need to start with leadership. That's typically universal. So something that we recommend, this is something that we've done a couple of times. We've done what we call a fire hose. It could be a day. I think I might have actually a slide for this. I don't have it in this deck, but these sort of fire hose sessions, which are actually getting all your executives in a room, and it's split up in two parts. The first part is actually just grounding everyone in terms of snapshot of the moment in time, this AI age that we're heading toward, and what that means, and making it specific to their company. And then the second is getting those leaders to just talk. And what are the challenges? What are the opportunities? Looking at AI from an optimistic point of view, but actually equally as important, looking at it from a pessimistic point of view. That's something that I really stress. It's something that I've learned through these digital transformations, especially social. One of the more recent ones is that I was an evangelist during the social years. I helped companies to figure out their initial social strategies. And you need to sort of be overly optimistic. But if I had to do it again, which I am now doing with AI, you also really need to be thinking about all the negatives as well. Because social media is a great example as in terms of where we are today. There's pretty much a negative for every positive.
Right.
When it comes to organizational and society as well. So that is something that should be factored in. It shouldn't inhibit accelerating your initiatives, but it should be factored in. What are the possible risks that could come with it, and also what are our responsibilities in society as well.
So my second question is about experimenting and so-called the KPIs. Do you have sort of examples, like what would be realistic, good KPIs to have in mind when you have an organization to experiment with AI?
Yeah, I don't have one that I could pull up that doesn't have a client name on it, but what we would do is actually we would help figure that out. We come up with a measurement framework, which is essentially starting backwards from the business objectives. Again, a business objective could be simply organizational learning. What are the metrics that you're going to measure that lead to organizational learning? So, for example, in that, if organizational learning is the number one ROI point of ROI, then you want to make sure that anything that you're sharing internally is actually any of the views, any of the engagement is high. You're less concerned with the performance of what the actual pilot was. If it's something that you built, you're less concerned with the usage. If it's not learning, it's actually, let's say you want to do something either internally or externally, you want to create a large language model to enhance your website, and you want to start small, but you're really interested in the performance, then it might be things like usage of that large language model, you may want to be analyzing the data that's being passed through it, the quality of those interactions, and you want to come up with a measurement framework that aligns with that. So it's different. It's different for every case, but a measurement framework is something that you want to create.
Okay, so I like to go back to the CLM versus LLM. Could you just articulate at a high level what's the security advantage, efficiency? How would you weigh on the decision? Do you recommend CLM to all your clients, or this is all kind of depends on the scale or the cost?
So there's actually multiple there's multiple ways you can approach a CLM. You can absolutely, for example, use enterprise chat GPT and just create a custom language model through OpenAI. That would be a custom language model. You're using a different platform. There's a number of platforms you can use for that. We would consider that a custom language model. But you want to have IT involved and look at the pros and cons when it comes to the data security around that. If you need something that is more sort of lockdown, I'll pull up an example. Oh, I did have this, by the way, the workshop. Okay, this gives an example of something that where you're building a custom language model that is a little bit more secure. You're actually putting in the safeguards. You're building your own enterprise database. You're not really passing through anything beyond. You might be using something like a Google Palm that is not retaining any information, but everything else is very much locked down and secure. So that would be a custom language model that has more enterprise layer security built into it. It's also more of a sort of build from the ground up custom model. So there's a spectrum of custom language models. It could be something as simple as OpenAI creating custom GPT to building a custom language model that's much more robust, locked down, sort of built for purpose.
So is this like once you build it's done, or is it dynamic? How does new data, how you go through the feedback loop once this is it is dynamic?
Very dynamic, because you're constantly updating it, you're constantly training it, you're constantly refining it, you're constantly figuring out where the hallucinations are happening, what's causing them, how to fix them, learning from that. And it's something that should be dynamic. It's something that you should always be. That's part of the value, is that it's always being trained on the latest data. It's always absorbing the latest data, and it's being updated. And I think that's something that we've learned through past digital transformations, that even with something as simple as websites today, that at some point you either have to iterate, evolve it, maybe rebuild it from scratch at some point, but it's not all that dissimilar from other significant technology builds.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing this. We could just go for an hour just for you to go through this deck, but I'd like to zoom out a little bit, David. I know that you've been hosting events like Unlock, and you've got speakers from different industries, from Silicon Valley as well. What's your worldview of AI? As you mentioned, internet, mobile, digital marketing. I mean, this whole evolution in terms of technology impacting professional services and our daily work and life. What do you foresee as AI's biggest impacts and the risks for the near term and midterm?
Yeah, when we were in the first, I would say 3 to 6 months of kind of this Gen AI / large language model revolution, actually just escape out of this and stop sharing so we can go back to full screen. I'd written a piece and I talked about this phrase, not a phrase I coined. I hadn't seen it at the time, but it's out there being used, and it's intelligent automation. And the reason why I chose to use intelligent automation to describe kind of I think a healthy worldview is to remind ourselves that we have to flip the AI so that we are driving it, and that it is in service to humanity and not the reverse. Because I do believe, so at a practical level, automation is really important because I think the business application especially is automation. It's white collar automation. And I actually don't think that enough people are talking honestly about that. Because, for example, entry-level jobs, a lot of white collar entry-level jobs will be made more efficient. Things that we've brought interns in the past can be done with AI now very efficiently. So there will be less roles in the white collar world. What we need to, as students of history, we need to look at things like the assembly line. We need to look at manufacturing. And we need to realize in manufacturing, there's very advanced technologies and there's a lot of machines and there are humans who operate those machines. And that's where the white collar world is heading. There's going to be the humans and there's going to be the machines. So there's going to be less humans needed. And we are going to be working with machines. So I think the best case scenario is we have what I like to think about as intelligent automation. On the societal front, again, similar to how we should learn from blue collar automation and things like the Industrial Revolution, things like assembly lines in our past, we should really look to one of the latter digital transformations in social media. And so we know there are all kinds of societal issues coming, whether spanning from disinformation to mental health. You have a substitute of intimacy. You have a whole host of mental health issues that come with social media, and I believe that we'll see the same things with artificial intelligence. There's absolutely artificial intimacy. Why talk to a real person when you can interface with a large language model who maybe either has a virtual skin or a physical skin? What's the value in actually talking to a real person or getting on the real world? So that's one of many potential examples. So we're heading into a really interesting near-term future where I do believe there's going to be a potential negative for every benefit, but that's where technology's been really in the past. The difference is it's happening faster because technological development is exponential. You go back, each big revolution that we have has a shorter term to impact with each one. So it tends to happen faster than we can process.
All right. So I'd like to, given the backdrop, the context of more on the enterprise versus society, what would be your David's advice to business leaders, mid-management, and college students, given what you said about intelligent automation?
So I want to make sure I'm following the question. You broke it down into business leaders?
Yeah, so your advice from David, given the intelligent automation that you are predicting, what would be your advice to business leaders, the C-level decision makers, mid-management, they are white collar, but they are managing teams, as well as college students who may be counting on entering the workforce as entry level, white collar.
That's such a great question. I love how you're framing it. Like, wonderful.
Thank you.
Look, at the senior executive level, you absolutely have to figure out what your vision is. Mm-hmm. And you have to get smart, and you need to lead the charge at getting your teams and getting your organization smart. And you're going to need to be the one, you and your team. So let's think of from a CEO perspective and their core team, right? Their EVPs and let's think of the first three levels, which are very senior executives. You have to figure out what your vision for the organization is. This is a transformative technology. It is a game-changing technology. It'll affect every business in some way, shape, or form. So you have to figure out what your vision is. If you're at the mid-level, you have to, I think, be getting smart individually, not only relying on those above you to figure it out. You need to be doing a lot of keeping up on the space, keep up on the news and the developments as well as the technology. You need to be dabbling. And then you need to also be sort of bottoms up, be advocating to those above you the need to formalize certain things. You know, as you're seeing opportunities, bring the ideas to your leaders, bring the thoughts, bring the potential issues, you know, the risks to your leaders. And then at the student level, I know that students are learning AI in school. There's so many programs. I mean, the money is there. There's an academia is actually, that's one of the areas that's been most disrupted, right? Because every student now is using all these large language models for their research and to write their papers. So they're already immersed in it. I think from a student perspective, what you need to be thinking about is what can me, the human, do? What can the human offer that AI technology cannot when it's my turn to enter the workforce? Because that is ultimately what will get you hired. You have to be offering something that the machine cannot do, but at the same time, being fluent, knowing how to prompt, which is something that students are learning, is a value add as well, right? Learning how to build, if you're a developer, learning how to actually build the large language models, structure the data sets, all the things, all the tools that come with that, being well versed in Python, all the new languages that have emerged that and the tools that come with it, which I think the smart developers are doing. So that's a lot, but it's a great question.
Thank you so much. So this is live and everybody can watch the replay at any time. That's a benefit of a LinkedIn Live event. Thank you for taking the time, David. And, I'd love to have you back again and, learn about what you're doing next.
Thanks, Helen. And thank you for joining us when we were in Austin. Are you going to go next year as well?
Of course.
Great. Well, then we'll see you in Austin next year.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Thank you, David.
Take care.